All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series More Than Meets the Eye Collection, Autobot Preceptor, who also comes with Ratbat and Ramhorn. And yeah, this is an interesting little set here. Basically, they have just redone Studio Series Preceptor. He's mostly the same mold, but he does actually have a couple of molding differences. And then instead of selling him as a deluxe price like they originally did, they're selling him at a Voyager price and including Ramhorn and Ratbat here. And yeah, the More Than Meets the Eye collection is kind of interesting in general because they're basically using it to reissue a lot of figures that were kind of sought after from the past few years that were kind of hard to get your hands on. Like they're doing a More Than Meets the Eye collection Sideswipe, which is, as far as I can tell, virtually an unchanged version of Kingdom Sideswipe, just, you know, not in a box set exclusive to Amazon, which is nice for people. And it's great for me because it means that this figure is still relevant, which means I can still use him as my my standard size comparison, which is lovely because he's a great little figure. But anyway, enough about Sideswipe. In this set, basically, like I said, we've done a slight alteration to Perceptor here and then included these two guys because, of course, of that one scene in the Transformers the movie where Blaster and his cassettes fought off, you know, Soundwave's cassettes while Perceptor was in the room. So these guys get packaged with him rather than, I don't know. I mean, I guess I'd rather they do it this way rather than like having it be sold with Blaster, because I definitely don't want to buy another Voyager figure again. But I don't know. It's kind of, again, a scummy thing because, like, I like this figure. I do think he is an improvement over Studio Series Perceptor. And if you don't have Studio Series Perceptor, then this is obviously a great set to get. But I probably wouldn't have picked up this figure on his own because I'm satisfied enough with Studio Series Perceptor. And likewise, I was satisfied enough with Siege Ratbat, who this is pretty much the same mold as, just with an extra bit. So the only reason I'm buying this Voyager priced set is for Ramhorn, which kind of sucks. And he's a great little Ramhorn. I love him a lot, but it's, you know, paying $35 just to get a mini con size figure is a kind of a bummer. I mean, you know, I could sell my other Ratbat and Perceptor or these ones if I really wanted to, but you know, you know how it goes with them re-releasing figures and having you get figures you've already bought to buy another figure that's boxed with it. It's not a new conversation, but it is kind of a bummer. But yeah, what they've kind of decided to do here is they've, unlike the previous version of Ratbat, they've included his little jetpack here, which can also be used as a handgun in robot mode. I mean, they show it on the box with Perceptor, but like obviously it's meant to go with Soundwave. I don't know why Perceptor would have the handgun that becomes Ratbat's jetpack. Weird. And likewise, similar to kind of how they did Steeljaw, you do have this extra bit that you sort of have to attach to Ramhorn to kind of complete him, and then they've made it so it's a little handgun in robot mode, which is, you know, I think it's a difficult thing that they're trying to do because obviously the G1 cassettes that they're adapting here, like, they had like the extra bits that you had nothing to do with. So I appreciate that if they're going to be, for accuracy's sake, giving them the extra parts, that they're at least giving you something to do with them. And at least they have like pegs and ports so you can like plug them onto the back of Soundwave or Blaster respectively when these guys are in their cassette modes. I can live with it. Obviously, the better alternative would be if it was all completely integrated, but I understand that that's kind of a challenge at this scale. And what's kind of interesting here, because like I said, he does have a few different parts from the original Perceptor. Mainly, the main thing that they changed here was giving it so he's got this panel on the back of his, you know, like back here, unlike the original Studio Series one where you just flip the head into the back, and then he had this huge cavity on his back in robot mode. They've given him this panel here. And what's kind of interesting is that like some of the new parts that they've given him, and it's a little easier to see in robot mode, but you can like see with the tabs here, are actually gang molded with the parts that make up Ramhorn, which are also gang molded with the jetpacks parts for Ratbat. They're all done in this like, you know, brown maroony type color, which is kind of funny because like obviously, you know, these three figures are going their separate ways in my collection. He's going with with Blaster, he's going with Soundwave, and he's replacing Studio Series Perceptor. But it's kind of funny that they all like share parts. And likewise, now Ratbat has this little connector bit that's red because it's gang molded with the new back panel here, which is kind of funny because it's like, you know, I don't know. This obviously I don't think was planned on the mold of Perceptor to begin with, like new heads and stuff usually are, because, you know, why would they include two different variations of chest for it to plug into? And then, you know, it's like obviously this one is just a little bit better engineered with that panel that covers up the head. I don't know if that just didn't fit into the budget the first time or whatever, but I just find it kind of funny. Like I laughed out loud when I noticed that this guy had maroon parts on him that were just painted red. But you know, it's just kind of a funny thing. It's not really to the detriment of the figure, I suppose. It's just kind of funny. But yeah, no, he looks good in his microscope mode here, or, you know, he looks accurate in his microscope mode. I always thought that the microscope mode for Perceptor looked kind of silly, but it's pretty much on par with the Studio Series one. Obviously, another big difference is he's got a much nicer shade of red here, whereas this guy's a little bit more orangey. I definitely prefer the coloration on this guy. He doesn't have the tops of his, or like the bottom sections of his hands painted to kind of like fill in and continue the blue there, which again, you know, I see where the paint budget for that is going, because it's pretty much used to like cover up this whole panel and a lot of his chest piece too. So, you know, I don't really blame them. But another big difference is he doesn't have any clear plastic parts. Like the scope doesn't have any see-through part. It's just painted gray. And then the chest piece is completely painted as well, which is kind of a bummer. I would have preferred that they left that on there, but whatever. Either way, he's a little bit wider in this mode, but otherwise there's not a huge difference between the two of them, as you can see. And then, I mean, you know, Ratbat, to bring on Siege Ratbat here, who looks a little bit nicer because I have like, you know, the like Toy Hacks labels on him, so he wasn't quite as like well painted earlier, but still I think he's got a little bit more paint wise than the new one. At least, I don't know, I feel like he prioritizes robot mode a little bit more, and he prioritizes alt mode a little bit more. I don't know, like he's got the painted stuff down here. It's really more of a matter of whether which like shade of purple you prefer for Ratbat, and honestly I can't totally decide myself, but you know, they both look decent. And then obviously the Ramhorn is the new part of this set, and he looks pretty nice in his little cassette mode. He's like one of the most like finely completed ones here. Like obviously, yeah, the little tape holes are a little bit high. They're not actually in the middle of the cassette, but otherwise I can live with that. And then of course Perceptor does come with the same gun that he had before, which you can just plug onto the side here. I guess it's a very tight connection, but you can plug it on there. He can't unfortunately plug it onto the back anymore, just because he doesn't have that port like the original one did, but you know, not a huge deal there. In terms of comparisons in this mode, here they are with Kingdom Sideswipe, just for a standard one for whatever that's worth. Here the cassettes are with Soundwave and Blaster, and then I guess, you know, he's a device guy, so I guess they kind of look good together too. And then we can bring on, you know, well, I'm not going to bring all of Soundwave's cassettes because we've seen Ratbat with them before, but it is nice to actually have the full set of the Blaster cassettes, at least the main four, aside from like the later year ones, to have all four of them together. It's nice to see them. And then these guys do fit into Soundwave and Blaster just about as well as the other guys do. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. That's what they look like together. And then with these bits, I guess for Soundwave, you could kind of rotate that peg down and then just like plug it on to the back here. He's got a little jetpack sitting off his back of his cassette mode, but you know, doesn't make it that much messier than it already was with like the arms and all the bits sticking off to the side. And with Blaster, I guess you can kind of plug this into the gun and then maybe flip these sections around, kind of store it that way. At least they've got sort of places to go on them, but whatever. Anyway, that's how those guys kind of work with them. I'm going to take them off to the side for just now and do the transformation for Perceptor. And yeah, like I said, I mean, he's pretty much exactly the same transformation-wise as the original Studio Series Perceptor. One difference is because these bits are a little bit wider, he really can't do his like weird tertiary tank mode anymore, just because the pegs just can't line up with these pegs anymore without the legs kind of splaying out to the side. So that's a little bit unfortunate. I guess if you were a fan of that mode, I don't know who really that's going to bother all that much, because this is a Studio Series figure. You can still kind of approximate it, but it's a little bit messy, and the legs are splayed out to the side a little bit, so it doesn't really work. But I don't know who's really going to shed much of a tear over that mode. But basically you just straighten out his legs here, flip out the feet, fold down the scope, fold up the chest, bring the arms up and around, and don't bring them into place yet, because you got to take the scope pieces and fold those down, and then you can click the shoulders into place, flip around the hands here. And then the big improvement is now you open up this panel for the back of the head, flip his head around. You can really see in there that burgundy color, if we get the light in there just right, is that he's got that brown plastic, which is pretty much his whole new chest piece here, but it doesn't matter that much. And you can fold that back up, and there we have Perceptor in his robot mode. And yeah, I mean, he looks pretty good. He looked pretty good before. He still looks pretty good. You could hardly tell the difference until you bring them side by side, and then you can really start pointing out the differences in hues and shapes and stuff like that. But, he's a good looking figure. Same articulation as before. Head's on a ball joint. Can rotate around, wiggle back and forth a little bit. Shoulders are on ball joints, which can rotate around and go out to the side. Bicep swivel, 90 degrees of bend at the elbow, nothing at the wrist other than just like bending in for transformation. Waist joint, hips can go forward and back and out to the side. This is still doesn't lock in place quite as well as I'd like it to. It does feel a little bit stiffer on him than on my original Studio Series one, but still, I wish that clicked into place a little bit better. Nice deep knee bend. Ankle tilt, toes can bend down. Nothing crazy, but, pretty just overall decent articulation. And then you can unlock the scope to have it kind of angle up there if you'd like. And also on mine, I feel like his scope actually sits a little bit more level than my original one did, where it kind of just sat slightly off to the side. Whereas this one actually feels like it actually sits on his shoulder properly, which is nice to see. And then, of course, we can bring back on Ratbat and Ramhorn here. And yeah, Ratbat transforms just the same as he did in the Siege version. You just fold down the wings just like that, flip them out to the side, flip down his little toesies, and then double hinge that head down. And now we can take that peg that he had and fold that out, and then basically take this section here. You can either have it be a handgun for whoever. I mean, obviously they show it off being wielded by Perceptor, but really this is more meant for Soundwave. But basically you take this section and just rotate these down. These are just pegged into place on this little section here, and then take that hole and then just peg it onto the peg here, which can be kind of tricky sometimes, but once you get it in place, there you got Ratbat with his little jetpack there. And then for Ramhorn, who's actually the new one here, basically you want to push in this section here to flip out the head, and then flip out his little horns here, and then rotate the feet out to the side. I guess you're supposed to do that one first, that one, and then that one. Rotate them out to the side, and then take these sections and just fold them in just like that. And then you take this section, and it'll actually clip underneath here, which helps fill in this gap just like this. And then what really locks into place is you take the missile pod sections and rotate them around, and they will tab into these sections here. And there we have Ramhorn as well. And yeah, all three of them look pretty good. Perceptor is much the same as he was before in terms of articulation. Did I already do articulation? I'll cut it out if I do it twice. These guys, in terms of their articulation, the head for Ramhorn can wiggle up and down. The feet can wiggle forward and back. And that's pretty much it. All you're getting for him, the little rhino guy. And then Ratbat can pretty much just, bring his wings down, and you can kind of fold his head up a little bit for when he's flying around. But yeah, in terms of comparisons in this mode, just for the standard one, here they are with Kingdom Sideswipes. You can see he's kind of a taller Deluxe there. That's what they look like with them. Here he is with the original Studio Series Perceptor, and I want to bring these guys off to the side so you can really see some of the differences here. Now, obviously, there's the changes in like the color of the plastic and things like that. Like he's a deeper red, a kind of like more greeny and darker, like turquoise color there, and then his like gray sections are a lot more gray and less black than his sections. But also, if you notice, he's kind of put on a few pounds. Like he's kind of like bulked out here in the waist, which I think is primarily, I don't know if they did this specifically to give him a different silhouette or if it's just how it happened to fit to get this hinge on there. I'm not totally sure, but also if you line him up shoulder to shoulder, he's definitely a bit wider than the original Preceptor too, which it's the arms aren't any wider. It's pretty much just that chest piece that's a little bit wider. And yeah, they both look good. I do miss the clear plastic on this guy, but they're both fine. Honestly, I might like swap their heads and swap the chest pieces, just because like I like the silvery painting here. I've already tested that out. He does have more of that like matte finish kind of like animation style head where it's just painted gray, which looks fine. I just kind of prefer the silvery head with the silvery eyes. And I did test this out. It doesn't look that weird that his head is like a darker shade than the rest of the gray when it's on there. So, I'm hoping it also won't look that weird with the chest being on there either, even though it's the slight painted bit of red is a different shade. And like, this is a different shade than like his, little like dials here. I don't think that would make that big of a difference, but then also like his Autobot symbol is not up here to be behind the clear plastic chest. It's further down, so I might have to put a sticker there, and then he might just have like 2 Autobot logos in alt mode. I don't know if that's really worth doing, but I'm kind of curious. But either way, that's what the two of them look like together. You can see his scope just doesn't quite sit as level as this guy's does, which is nice that that's an improvement. That's probably just a mileage may vary kind of thing, but otherwise their articulation's exactly the same. It's just that he's a little bit wider. And then we can bring on again Soundwave and Blaster, and then all of the cassette buddies. Here's the here's Ratbat with the original Ratbat. Again, whichever color one you like. You can use the jetpack on this guy. I found that just the tolerances on mine, it makes it a real pain to peg onto this specific peg. Like, I'm going to try to do it, but actually, that was much easier than the first time I tried it. And he looks good with the little jetpack. It's really just a matter of which shade of purple you like. And because I've got all the, like Toy Hacks labels on this guy, I'm probably going to have this guy be the one who actually has the jetpack and then put him somewhere else. But, either of them look good. It's really, just whatever one you prefer, honestly. Or if you don't have the Siege one, this one is perfectly fine. Like, he's not a huge downgrade or anything like that. He's maybe missing a few paint apps. Now I'm having a hard time putting it on him. It's just annoying that peg is on a hinge. But either way, either of them look pretty good. And then we can bring on the other cassettes here, the other Blaster cassettes to go with Ramhorn. And they all look pretty cool together. And like I said, you can use these bits while these guys are in their cassette modes to give like extra guns and things to Blaster and Soundwave. And that looks pretty cool. And you can store it somewhere on the back here. I mean, his pegs are a little bit hard to work with. I guess you can can you get this on here? You can kind of get into the back one. But it does kind of like bump into the waist joint there a little bit. And then for Soundwave, let's see what he looks like holding this and get Preceptor standing on his feet again. Rotate those down and he can hold that, or you could plug it onto the side of his arm, and that still looks pretty cool. And then he's got plenty of ports in the back here. You give Soundwave a little like micro jetpack, which is kind of funny, but at least it feels like it has a bit more of a function on his back there. But yeah, other than that, there's not really a ton to say about this set. I find it just like, I don't know, a little unreasonably funny that they did the gang molding with Ramhorn so that parts of Preceptor are actually like painted red and are burgundy underneath. I just think I don't know why I find that so funny. It just made me laugh a lot when I noticed that. He's a great looking Preceptor. As to whether you like him better or worse than the original Studio Series version, that's always going to be up to you, but he's pretty much on par. I do love that they gave him this new panel, and I should have brought the G1 toy up to compare him with, but he does have it's the same sculpting that was basically on the G1 toy. And Ramhorn's great. I mean, he does the thing like Steeljaw does, where he's got like the extra bit that you have to put on, but he was sold as an accessory as a part of a pack and not as a $12 figure. So you can forgive it a little bit, and there's more for his extra bit to do than Steeljaws. So he's better than Steeljaw is basically what I'm saying here. And I think it works well with Ratbat too. He doesn't look terrible without the jetpack, but you know, if you want him to have the jetpack, it's nice that that was included there. But yeah, no, it's a fun little set. Obviously, it's the kind of thing where it's like, I didn't necessarily need Perceptor. I didn't necessarily need Ratbat. I got the set for Ramhorn, but I do like all three of them, and I do feel like I am going to at least use parts of them in like my definitive versions of all three of these characters. So yeah, you know, if you don't have Ratbat, if you don't have Perceptor, this is an awesome set. But yeah, other than that, I would like to see more stuff like this where they do release like these little guys as, you know, extra components with larger figures. Just it would be nice if they were just with figures that they were meant to be with, rather than like ones that you've already bought and now have to buy again. But since they're not doing like core class anymore, at least not for you know, like the regular Generations line, and they're not, you know, doing multi-packs of mini-cons, it's a nice way to get these guys. But you know, that's another conversation for a whole other day. But either way, it's a fun set, and I do like it, all things considered. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to them. If you enjoy my videos, oh yeah, he's got a gun, who cares? If you enjoy my videos, leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I do reviews every Tuesday and Thursday, and without further ado, here we have Transformers Studio Series More Than Meets the Eye Collection, Perceptor with Ramhorn and Ratbat.